Hi everybody, my name is Draman and welcome to my channel. Today I would like to talk to you about the small minifigures, Masters of the Universe by loyal subjects. So this is what I have currently, what you see in front of you. I have about 5 good guys and 6 of the evil warriors. So let's take a closer look at each of them. What I have here is He-Man, with quite an oversized head. He comes with the shield, his power sword, and he was supposed to come with a battle axe, but since I got these second hand, then he didn't come with his axe. His sword can be stored at the back, which is quite neat, although it's a little bit silly because you seem to be able to only store it sort of barely sideways because of his head and the hair impeding the way where to insert the sword. Let's try, maybe it would kind of be better if I do it this way. Nah, that just looks just as silly. Anyway, if you fiddle with it a little bit, maybe it would work, but this is barely the best I can do with it. So I just avoid putting it in his at the back of him, so I just put it in his hand like so. So yes, these little figurines have articulation. At least this is the first. He-Man is from the first wave, and so far there were 2 waves since at least about a year or 2 ago. There was supposed to be a 3rd wave, but so far I've only seen prototypes at the New York Toy Convention last year, and I believe it was mentioned on several sites as well, and the painted prototypes were shown, but I have not seen any of them being released in stores so far. Now, most of these characters, and mind you, I don't have a complete set of Wave 1 and Wave 2, I only have a bit from both. There were variations of both waves, or at least of Wave 1 in particular, color variations. So, for example, what do I mean by that? Draman here would be released in a different color scheme. So certain characters among them would be released in different color schemes, including He-Man, where his power harness would be in different color. Anyway, going back to He-Man figure here, so he does have articulation in the legs, so he can sort of pull them. He can partially do a small split. He has articulation in the waist. It's not spring-loaded, mind you, so it's not like a vintage figure that he would have that. He can move his arms up and down, slightly sideways. His wrists have articulation too. The head can turn left to right, but ever so slightly. And the only thing noticeable, which is pretty much mimicking the vintage Masters of the Universe, is there is no articulation in the knees, and there is none in the elbows. Now, mind you, this is only true when it comes to this kind of articulation lacking for the Wave 1 figures. Wave 2, which I'll show you in a bit, is a different story. There were some improvements and changes made. So that would be He-Man, and let me just show you the types of boxes that these figures would come packaged in. So this box here would be for Wave 1 of the figures. You can also see the information here in the corner, and that it's made by loyal, sorry, I'll just zoom in a bit, that it's made by loyal subjects. And then you have other characters you can get, because it would be a blind box, so you don't really have a clue what you're going to get. And many people were annoyed with this feature back in the day due to the fact that they would end up getting stuck with so many multiples. And the figures at that time were a little bit costly. So you also had an option of getting Skeletor, Stratos, Beastman, and there were some rather hard to get figures, which were rare chase figures. So you would have a gold He-Man, for example. You would have an Evil Reign repaint. You would have Triclops, which is more based on the vintage mini comic books. And then you have another version of He-Man here, who I believe is based on some of the, if I remember correctly, vintage German Masters of the Universe stories. And then over here, we have Trapjaw, we have He-Man, and we have many faces. So this is how the box for the Wave 1 would look like. And then, of course, in here, when you open it, oops, let's just try that again. There we go. You get a silver packaging that you just have to rip open and then see what you got. So that's how the first wave packaging looks like. Now, going back to the figurines, let's continue further with the Wave 1 figures. So the next one would be Stratos, the leader of the people of Avion, or at least the bird people of Avion. He came with the detachable wings and the stuff of Avion. Now this is the same stuff he came with, or at least one of the figures came with in the Masters of the Universe Classics, for those of you who are familiar with that He-Man line that came before these guys. Now again, the same articulation with the head and the legs, arms, and so forth. The knapsack here, or sorry, not the knapsack. The whole armor, including the rockets at the back, is not removable, so it's molded on. It's sculpted on. And there was a variation of Stratos that would have the reverse colors. So instead of red wings, you have the blue wings. So the colors would just go in reverse, but it's practically the same figure with the same accessories. So that is Stratos. Next one, we have Many Faces. He comes with his laser gun, just like the vintage one, or any other version of him that came since. And the best part, as far as I'm concerned, the best part about him, articulation is pretty much the same except for the articulation in the head, which is practically not going to happen. It's static due to the size of his helmet. And the feature, mind you, this is the only figure among them that actually preserved its original action feature, which I find very neat. And I didn't even know until I actually got him in my hand. The fact that he can actually change his faces, which is very neat. So there is the monster face, Many Faces. And then we have the human version of Many Faces. And the last one, the robotic Many Faces. So that is so cool. I really like that at least one of the characters has its original action feature still incorporated. So I find that to be very, very cool. So let's leave him on the monster face there. Whoops, there goes He-Man. I think he had enough of my story. So let's put him right back there. And let's move on. Let's move on to the next figure. So whom else are we going to take a look at next? Let's see. Now, let's take a look at Beastman. One of the bad guys for a change. Oh, there we go. Whoops. Anyway, Beastman, the henchman of Skeletor, the most known henchman there is. Again, same articulation like the Stratos and He-Man. He also has a very oversized head that has some articulation to it, obviously. I think better than He-Man's. So he can turn his head more left and right. He comes with his weapon. So that's neat. And of course, again, the armor is not removable. Not unless you really want to rip the head off and see if you can do it that way. But I wouldn't really want to do that for the fear of breaking it. And he looks pretty much exactly like he would appear in the cartoons. In the vintage cartoon. So that would be Beastman, and he looks pretty neat and very ferocious. You can tell that by the expression on his face. So that's Beastman. Moving along to Men-at-Arms. or as he's known by his real name, Duncan. So again, same articulation as the rest, and he comes with 3 weapons, out of which I only have 2. I unfortunately don't have the third one, which would be a sword. These are the kind of weapons, especially this little laser gun he's holding. Let's just take it out of his hand for a moment. This laser gun is the same type of gun that would come with the weapons rack with the vintage Castle Grayskull, except this one is colored. So the vintage one was gray, light gray in color, and this is pretty much reminds me of that same laser gun. So this is how it looks. And he comes, of course, with his battle mace. You cannot have men-at-arms with one without his most well-known weapon. So there we go. Now that sword that I am missing is the same sword again that actually I noticed it's the same sword that came packaged with the weapons rack for the Castle Grayskull. And the head is also quite movable. He also has an enlarged head. The helmet is not removable, and he comes with his mustache, which is good because everybody always complained that the vintage 80s version of Men-at-Arms never came with the mustache, so this one does. The armor is sculpted on, so it's not removable. So yeah, pretty solid looking little figure. So that would be Men-at-Arms. Now let's move on to more of the bad guys. I'm gonna take a look at Trapjaw, or as he's known by his alternate name when he was not Trapjaw, according to the 2000X Masters of the Universe comics, he was known as Cronus. But this here is Trapjaw. So here's another one that comes with an intact action feature, just like his vintage counterpart, so the articulation is the same. I'm always careful when I move their heads because sometimes it feels a bit stiff on the neck. He has a sculpted belt, which is very nicely done. There's the skull with the crossed bones there, his shoulder pads, and the shin guards. And of course, we come to the main attraction here. Here is his laser gun, which I think I'm pointing the wrong way, or maybe I'm not. There we go. So he comes with his attachable or detachable laser gun, and it's a bit stiff when you have to remove it though. So there it is. Now what's the best part, you wonder? As I mentioned already, he comes with his original action feature intact, meaning he comes with all his attachments just like the old figure. So there is the clawed attachment, and there is a third one as well, so he's complete. A hook attachment, so you can put any one of them onto his hand, which is very neat. I'm glad they kept that. I was worried that they will only include one weapon to cut costs. Very tight to pop it back in there. There we go. Anyway, now the thing about him at the back here, he has the storage area where you can just, and they do have a little hooks on the side so you can attach his weapons. Sorry, his arm attachments. So there we go. That's neat. Just like, yet again, just like all the other versions of Trapjaw, he has a place where to attach his weaponry. And let's just see. This one is giving me a bit of a problem. But there we go. Got it. And of course, his jaw can open and close, which is also pretty neat. So there we go. I am Trapjaw. So, anyway, that's him. Let's move along to the next one. And the only lady I got, as far as these figures go, is Evelyn. Now, mind you, again, this is what I got second-hand yet again. So she's missing her magic stuff, unfortunately. And she was she was given to me, actually when I got her, she was placed with completely wrong stuff, and the stuff that she came with was a stuff that looks a great deal like King Randor's stuff from the sorry, it looks more like King He-Man's stuff from the classics, so I'm not sure how that stuff came to be. But anyway, going back to Evelyn, again an oversized head with a very little movement to it. It feels very stiff. But she can move her arms, and she cannot move them sideways, surprisingly enough, but only up and down. The legs can move slightly forward, so she's not as articulated as others. And let's see if she has any movement in her waist. Yeah, very little. I think the legs and the waist are slightly stuck in that pose due to the cape, which is a very rigid plastic, so you cannot move her as much. But she still looks pretty good, and she came in some color variations herself, and you must have noticed one on the back of the packaging there. So that is Evelyn. Now we move on to the next. That would be Triclops, another figure. So there is definitely a few figures in these waves that kept their original action feature, like in the vintage toy line. And Triclops is no exception to that rule, so he also comes with his action feature intact. Another henchman of Skeletor, for those of you who are not familiar with him. Same articulation, comes with his battle sword. And he comes with his feature of switching his eyes. There we go, another one. A more grim looking one, and then an angry one. So that means when he's really, really about to pulverize somebody. And of course he comes with his armor, and again with the holster area or the scabbard area where he can sheath his sword. So let's see how would that work this time. Oh, that looks much better. With the He-Man I had a bit of a problem there, but with Triclops it's working like a charm. A very neat way of storing his sword. So there we go. Let's put that back. Whoops. Sometimes their hands are very, very hard to open up a little so you can push the sword in. But anyway, we got it. So, who else is in the line then? Let's start with Wave 2. So before we continue talking about the individual Wave 2 figures, of which I only have, let's see, 1, 2, I have about 3, and this one I'm going to show you is just a borrowed one. So over here we have the Battle Armor He-Man that came in Wave 2, which pretty much he has the same appearance as the regular He-Man. There we go, side by side. So it's pretty much the same sculpt with some variations. Of course, the armor is going to be different, but the weapons are the same. So this one does come with an axe and a sword and a shield, this one right here. And the facial expression is slightly different. But in general, the sculpt is pretty much the same. So what's the difference with these guys? I mentioned earlier, there is some difference. First of all, as you can tell, the packaging is different. Now let's go back once more to the Wave 1 box, and you'll see what I mean. So there we go. This is the Wave 1, and this is the Wave 2. So there is definitely difference in how they look. Here we would have an open window. Here there is no open window, so you cannot really tell what you're getting. And here you roughly already know what you're getting, except there were some exceptions to this rule, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then, of course, the thing that remains the same is that they're showing you the chase figures and your chances of winning other characters in the wave. So let's take a quick look here. Whom else do we get in Wave 2? And of course, this wave was also known for some of the repaints that came, and mostly was actually, sorry, not so much the repaints, but it was mostly focusing on chase figures, which in most cases are particularly repaints. So we had a chance of getting Draman, Merman, Stinkor, Fisto, the two different versions of Zodak. They are different characters, they just belong to the same affiliation, so they're cosmic enforcers. So this particular Zodak was from the 2000X cartoon series, and this one was pretty much from the vintage line, but they both showed up in Masters of the Universe Classic storyline. Then over here we would have the battle armor He-Man, and something I don't have and I wish I did, but unfortunately it's very hard these days to even come across it, would be Battle Cat with a removable saddle, Panther with a removable saddle, battle armor Skeletor, Orko, Sorceress in her classic colors, and here would be the chase slash color variations figures that were more difficult to get. So we have classic King Randor, we have the pink sorceress with a staff, and I don't quite recall which particular comic she wore this color variation. And then we have Troll and Prisoner, which is either Orko or one of his nemesis, I'm not sure. And then we have the gold edition Orko, which was the hardest one to get of all the four here. I don't have any of these, by the way, and I still am more interested to just see if I can find the regular ones when possible. So the thing to mention very quickly about the Panther and Battle Cat here, even though I don't have them personally, is that there were two variations of both. Not in the color scheme would be pretty much the same, but in the way they were presented. So these were the regular versions. Now there were also flocked versions of both Panther and Battle Cat that would come all flocked up, but the problem is with the flocking you couldn't see any of the detail on them. So that would kind of nullify the whole thing. In the case of Panther, when the face is all flocked up, the eyes can barely be seen, if at all. So the flocked versions are more rare, but the regular ones are better because visually speaking you can sort of see the details on them, which is a good thing. Now to show you what I meant by chase packaging for the figures, they would also have a window like this, but that window would be darkened, so you cannot really see what you're getting. You're still getting a figure, obviously, but you just don't know what kind of figure you're going to get. Now what's not mentioned on these packages, well actually some of it seems to be, so there were some variations to the wave. So you would have a wave 2 and then you would have a wave 2.5, which is pretty much what happened with the first wave 2. So sometimes they would include other characters that you didn't get in the original wave. So in this case, what is the difference? We have a chance of getting a mechanic who comes with his extendable neck detachments that you can just attach on him. And then we have Draman color variation with orange and red. Then we have Wundar, which is very difficult to get as well. Then we have Orko, but without the circle on his chest. And over here we have Zodak, but in a purple color variation. So this is the kind of stuff you would get if it's a mystery figure that you actually cannot see, meaning most likely you're gonna get one of the harder to get ones. So in this particular one is just a Draman repaint, meaning where is it? Meaning this one right here. So anyway, another note of interest is that some of these waves that would insert some newer characters and modify, let's say, wave 1 and wave 2, would be sold by a variety of stores out there. So you would have to chase particular figures in particular stores only. So for example, the stores that would carry figures like this would be Hot Topic, Walmart, even Toys R Us back in the day, and I believe Target as well. So about 4 different major retailers would carry these. So you would get the variations of the waves from only particular stores and the color variations. So it's a little bit complex. But if you're only aiming to get each of the figures in their classic appearance, then you don't have to worry about the color variations. The only thing you would have to worry about, of course, are the chase figures, which are not so easy to get. Not to mention that even the regular versions of specific characters like Orko and Sorceress would be rather hard to get. So moving along now to Wave 2 figures. And we're going to start with Draman here to take a closer look. This is the regular version. So the Draman comes with his battle axe. And it looks pretty neat. Now of course he does not have the spring-loaded legs, so that's not going to happen. And he does not have a storage space for his axe either. Articulation is more or less the same. At least when it comes to him, it's still pretty much the same as in Wave 1. He cannot turn his head due to his armor. And his head is significantly smaller than, let's say, that one of He-Man. So I suppose he's, due to his appearance and everything, he's supposed to look more or less like this. But some of the other characters, like let's say Merman over here, also come with somewhat significantly smaller heads. They're still big, but not as big as He-Man or Trapjaw or Man-at-Arms or Beastman. So that's the one particular difference of Wave 2 aside from packaging. So now we're talking about the differences in the figures. The heads, for some of them, would get quite a bit smaller for some reason. And the articulation, for the most part, would remain the same. So Merman here comes with his sword, the sea sword. But he also comes with something that the Wave 1 figures don't have. So some of the figures in Wave 2 came with an added articulation. And that added articulation is in the knees, in the legs. So that's neat. And they would look more upright. While, let's take a look at He-Man here. While He-Man would have more squatted pose because there is no articulation in the legs. So you can see they're roughly the same height, except Merman looks more taller somewhat. Now He-Man catches up to the height due to the fact that his head is quite big. So, but you can tell if you look at the legs look more straight, and therefore he looks taller, while He-Man is in a more squatted position since his legs cannot straighten up. So that's one big difference between Wave 1 and Wave 2 figures. The added articulation to the legs. Moving along to the next figure that I'm going to mention is, or actually that would be the last figure, that would be the Stinkor, the evil master of bad smell. And unfortunately he does not come with the overpowering perfume smell like his vintage counterpart, so that feature is not present. But he does come with his orange armor, and he's pretty much faithful to his vintage look. So the head is pretty much the same, which is a neat thing to observe. He comes with a shield, of course, that's his only weapon usually. Except for the classics version, which came with some extra accessories. He also has articulation in the knees, and his feet are pretty stable, so he can, even though I was always worried that they cannot stand on their own much because of the very large heads, but in reality you can still pose them and they will not topple down easily. The armor is not removable, unlike the vintage one where it is. But you can tell that the armor is pretty loose, or it feels that way. Yes, there is still articulation, although a very tight one in the waist that kind of sort of mimics the action feature of a waist punch from the vintage one. But yeah, that would be Stinkor, and as you can tell, which was same case with the vintage Merman and Stinkor, the heads are the same. So that is a sort of a neat tribute to the vintage counterparts. So they pretty much reuse the same heads and then just modify them a bit. So yeah, that is a neat thing to do. Anyway, that would be pretty much all the Loyal Subject human figures I have so far. I'm not sure if I'm going to be lucky to find any more of them at a decent price. That only, time will tell. But I do highly recommend them for those of you who are interested in little mystery figures and things of that sort, because there is so many diverse minifigure lines out there for many different franchises, but my preference is only toward the He-Man ones. So this is all I got for now. I hope you guys enjoyed my long talk. Sorry about that. I tried to keep it short, but I hope I made it interesting for all of you viewers. So that would be all for now. I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.